I love paving, not for the fact that it's practical, but the fact that it can actually pretty up your house and make it look $1 million bucks. Whether it's just steppers down the side of your house, a driveway, a path, or that entertaining area that you've always wanted, pavers can do the job for you. Now I can show you how to lay them, and you can do your own little project at home. First thing you got to do is work out your little job. I'm going to pave here. I'm going to come across the house 4 meters and then out 3.6. To mark it out and to set it out, you'll need a string line, some pegs, a tape measure, spray paint, and a hammer. Now to start marking out, I like to go to the most important corner first. And this one here, out of all 4, is the most important point. I'm going to work off the house because it's relatively straight. I'm still going to use a string line there and go forward from there. Straight away, looking at this concrete slab, I can see that it's not 90 degrees to this wall. So it's important that you only work off one face and do your maths from there. Now I know I said 4 meters, but I'm actually going to mark 4.1 over here. It gives you a bit of breathing space. It means your road base and your sand can go past your finished paving side and you can cut it away later on and haunch it up. So 3.6 becomes 3.7. Now just with a couple of old bricks, because they're nice and heavy and not going to move, I'm going to mark it out. It doesn't need to be super accurate because we're not actually laying any pavers. It's pretty much just like joining the dots. And remember, this is well wide of our finished paver and it's going to be mucked up with a spade in a couple of seconds anyway. Now I know the line that I've already marked out is parallel to the house because I've measured out 3.7 here and 3.7 at the other end, and I've done a straight line with a string. So how do I get the sides right? Well, I'm actually using the side of the house. I've come off 100 mil and I've found this point here and they look like they're running in the same direction. Now this is accurate enough for the excavation section because I've got that 100 mil to play with, but it's not accurate enough for when it comes to laying the pavers. A great little way to double check that you're on the right path is to see if it's square. Now measuring from opposite corners, what have we got? 5500. And this is a good little tip. Putting a brick in each corner makes this a one-man job rather than having to get someone to give you a hand. 5500, wish me luck. 5500. Year 9 maths was well worth it, even though it took me 3 years. Once you've done your marking out, it's on to excavating. Now you might be lucky and you don't need to take anything away for your finished heights of your paving job. But here, I'm going to marry it into the concrete slab, and of course I don't want to go too high up the side of the house and damage it. So we need to go down. And straight away, I can see that we've got these here. I'm guessing Telstra and power, but I'm not an electrician and I don't know, and either would you. So how do you guarantee that you're not going to damage any of these or even hurt yourself? It's called dial before you dig. The number's 1100, and these days they send you emails from all your suppliers, whether it be your power, your phone, your water or your gas. They tell you roughly where they run on your property. Problem is, this is an old joint and things might have been added to it since the day the place was built. So it's a safety blanket, but it's not a guarantee. So when it comes to digging, I'm very, very careful because I want to see my next birthday. What I do in a space like this, rather than throwing a spade in and chopping into the soil, I'd use my foot and feel as I go. That way when I hit something, I can stop. The spade stopped at the moment, I can investigate. Nah, just a little pebble, I can keep going. But that's a really good tip, is you could do this with confidence. You know that both those things are in conduit. is go down and feel for them. Nope, all good. Where do you start excavating? Well, I'm back to that corner that I started measuring off as well, because I can work off the height of the slab. Now I know I need to go down 170 mil from this for my finish height to be flush with that. So you need to work out your finished height and work down from there. 40 and 30, 70, 100 mil of road base, 170 mil I gotta go down. If I get this right through here, I can work that level all the way across my job. So the excavation's done. That's the hardest job in the whole thing, the most physical. Now you might think, why don't I just skip a little bit of the excavation and use less of the road base and sand? Well, you could, but your job won't last as long as if you do all the steps properly. We're going to bring the road base in now, spread it out about 100 mil thick, and then compact it with the whacker. So what is road base? Well, commonly people make the mistake that it's just blue metal. Blue metal's the big chunky stuff that you see like this, which is great for the back of a retaining wall where you want to create drainage. But trying to compact things that are all the same size, well, it's near impossible. So if you look at this, it's got big stuff, little stuff the size of a grain of sand, which means when you compact it together, there's a size particle to fill every hole, and that's why it goes hard and flat. Well, I've got my 100 mil of road base in, and I'm ready to go with the whacker, but there's a couple of things you can do first to get a really good job. What I'm using here is just a straight edge that's on a pole. Now, I don't expect every homeowner to have one of these, and you shouldn't go and buy one or hire one, because if it's just a little job you're doing around the house, the back of your hard rake will do exactly the same job for you. It just might take a second or two longer. Now, if you look at this road base, it's a bit dry and dusty, so when I hit it with the whacker, it might be a bit light and fluffy. If I give it a light hose, it can set even harder than just going over it with a whacker. You don't want it too wet, so the whacker goes swimming and gets sunk. You just want it damp so that it compacts nice and hard. Now the next step is the sand, and even the way you tip it out of the barrow is important. As you go forward, the nose goes into your road base. If I was just to pull that out, I'd lift up all the road base and mix it into my sand. So if I do it gently, take it off the ground, I barely disturb my footing. As for the sand, how do you get your heights? Well, this is where you need a little bit of patience, a little bit of finesse, and a little bit of skill. I move the sand around by hand and push it towards the edges. I've got a bit too much there at the moment, so I can push that into the middle. Now, how do I get my finished height of a paver perfectly flush with any existing height that you're working on? In this case, that existing concrete slab. Well, I can't think of a better way than actually using one of your pavers. I've got a decent paver, I broke it into 4, and I can use it around the job to get it right. By running it along over the sand, there's not enough in there now, silly boy, I can get exactly the right height. A little bit more in there. You can see that my paver's flush with the concrete. I haven't had to pick up a tape measure and put it down. I can just run that across there. And that's a perfect bed to start my paving. What do you do where you don't have a surface like that? Well, I've run a string line off the concrete and picked a height at the end of my job. I've got fall of 1 in 100. What does that mean? Well, over a metre, it falls 1 centimetre. Over 10 metres, it falls 10 centimetres. And if you look at that on a bubble, they call it line fall. You can see here that the bubble is touching the line, so I know that it's falling that way. This little pad here is perfect. If I continue moving the sand down, picking those 2 pads there up to touch the string line, I'll have a nice flat, level surface that falls perfectly around the corner. And because we're not putting any drainage in here, that's really important. Remember I said the word finesse? Well, this is when you need it. You take your time, slow down, and get this sand on the one plane. How do you do it? Well, I showed you the pads. I've done that all the way along 2 edges. Then I've put this screed in here, and I've made a little valley coming off the height that I had near the concrete. If I check this, and I've got line fall again, I know that that is running perfectly level with this here, falling 1 in 100. I can continue that along there and get that line all the way to the end of my paving. Perfect. And make a little channel. Now a pro paver would go straight over the top without digging into either of those channels and remove the excess sand. For a beginner, and I still like to do it for speed, is get some bar. You can use tube or anything you've got lying around the house, as long as it's relatively flat. Lay it over the top. The negative with tube is you need to dig a trench for it, and the positive with this is you can take it away and you don't have to fill anything in. All I need to do now is tap them down, drag my screed. This is a professional one, but if you don't have one, you can use your level, just be gentle with it, or any piece of timber, provided that it's dead straight. If it's your first time doing it, I'd recommend knee pads. They get very sore very quick. Now the fun stuff, we get to actually pave. What I'm doing first is setting up a string line so I can lay my first header course. Now, as a pro, I'd run it off a string line every day of the week. But a common mistake for DIYers is the pavers start touching the string line. As you start touching the string line, you start pushing it out and your paving gets a little bit crooked. So a good little cheap way is to set up a brick. Now we're laying 400mm pavers, and I'm going to allow a bit of room for those conduits down the other end, so I've gone 460 off the house. Set the brick up here and in a couple of other places. And then you can take away the string line and use your straight edge to butt your pavers up to. The straight edge isn't going to bend on you. If you move it, you're going to see it and you can push it back, and you'll end up with a perfectly straight header course. So the string's gone and it's replaced with this hard edge. Now where my first paver is going to go has 3 bricks sitting in at the moment. But what you can do, hello mate, don't you walk on the sand, you stay there, it's a spectator sport. I can bring it on this side. So now it definitely can't move back. Same goes here. I can bring it to this side. And I can put my pavers in as hard as I like, because that's not going to move. Now when you're laying pavers, you normally have to have a screwdriver or a tape measure, and you need to try and get 3mm gaps between all your pavers so they don't butt up to each other and rub over time and chip. One of the best things about these Adbri Quadros is they've got lugs or nibs on the side, so when you lay them, they butt up, but they're below the surface. If they rub, it doesn't matter, but you end up with perfect gaps every time. Oh, Danny. First one's always the hardest. And again, I'm starting in this corner because it's the corner you're going to see the most. when it comes to laying pavers, I like to tap each one individually as I put them down. Sometimes I might use my foot, but you end up leaving a mark. Sometimes I use my hand, but that gets pretty sore quickly. So a little mallet like this and a white one is perfect, just to make sure that everything's sitting right. And the reason why it's white, it doesn't scuff, so there's less cleaning when you finish. There's lots of little tips and tricks that can make the job easier for you, just like stacking the pavers like this. Off-centered each one means when I come to get it, I've got a nice handle on both sides, and then again for the next one. Now I know this isn't my prettiest angle, but I'm going to show you how to lay a paver. You don't go like this and drop it in. You put your fingers at the top of it, you find the corner, and you lay it down. That way you don't disturb any of the sand and muck up your next paver. Now I'm going to lay the header course coming out this way. One of the most important things you've got to get right is to make sure that you're exactly 90 degrees on this corner. There's 3 ways I like to do it. First one, just lay a paver blind, make sure the joints line up and the gap is even. Because of those lugs, you've got your 3 mil straight away, and it should be close to 90 degrees. Now to double check, grab a builder square. They cost you about 10-15 bucks. And check this corner. If everything's touching, all those lugs are touching, then you're pretty sure that it's square. But if you want to be the most accurate, you should do a 3, 4, 5 triangle. It sounds scarier than it is. If I just use 4 pavers and 3 pavers that way, I know that they're 400 each, so the distance is 1600 mil. That is my 4, my 1200 over there is my 3. So for this to be square, it should be 2 meters. I'm out by about 5 mil, so I need to kick these out. Well, that's the hard part of paving done. I've got the header going in 2 directions. It's pretty much just fill in the blanks now, and then we can finish the job off. As you can see, I've taken the planks away, because from now on, I can walk on the new pavers. Don't run on them or jump up and down, because they're still a little bit loose. But if you walk comfortably on them, you'll keep your sand nice and clean. Now I'm laying the first of the inlay. As you can see, it's only half of one of these pavers because we're doing stretcher bonds. So it's quite a simple cut with a wet saw or a brick saw, but you start off with a half and then lay fulls for the rest of the line. Start off with a full and then lay fulls for the rest of the line. Half, full, and so on. It'll end up looking exactly like brickwork that you'd see on the side of a house. It's nearly time to crack a cold one and celebrate on your new patio, but not quite yet. You need to fill the gaps with a sand. Now I'm using a gap sand here, which is nice and solid, and I find it does suppress a few weeds long term, but you can use a wash beach sand. If you're going to order it, you can just ask for a sharp, clean sand. A couple of bags should do a job like this, and the drier the sand and the drier the paver, the easier it is to move it around. Now don't be disappointed if you sweep it into every crack and you come out tomorrow morning and you see that it's fallen through and it's left some marks like this. You keep a little bit to the side and keep topping it up for a couple of days. You'll fill every joint and you won't have a paver wobbling ever. Pavers down, they look magnificent except for the last header course on this edge. Now I'm going to show you 2 different ways you can haunch. The first one is you leave that last course out and throw some mud in there and tap them down and lay it on top. And when I say mud, it's obviously a sand and cement mix. It's 3 parts of the same sand that I was paving on and 1 part cement. That's pretty strong, and I've made it pretty stiff. You can see it's not runny. If it was soft and runny, when I lay the paver, it would just swim on me. And by swim, I mean move. So going underneath the paver like that, keying it in and then doing an angle on the side of it is the strongest and best way to do it. The quickest and easiest way to do it is to lay the paver, then come along with the same mix and throw the mud up next to it and just try and push a little bit underneath. Of course, I'm going to tidy that up with a trowel. So you can go under and on the side, or just on the side like this. So as you can see, it's sitting on about 150 mil of mud. I clean up the edges, aim for 45 degrees, but it's going to be covered by either a garden bed or lawn, so you're never going to see it. That's where you get the kids to write their names in it. The second way, you end up with a bigger haunch because it's got to do more. You don't have that bit underneath helping you anchor it in. I still aim for 45, but you end up with a lot more mortar in the ground. And if you're laying a lawn and you want it to be fantastic, you're going to find that your grass dries out a little bit more doing it this way because there's less soil for it. I can't help myself. I've been doing it for 20 odd years. Lucky last job. We're going to compact the pavers down and bed them in place. But if I use the plate compactor without this piece of carpet there, hard surface on hard surface, I'd end up breaking pavers. So I've got a piece of carpet, I've attached it to the front with a couple of tie wires on each side. I'm going to protect my ears because I've only got one pair and fire this bad boy up for the very last time. Now, because I use the Pave lock, it's important that I just give the whole job a wash down when I finish. Get rid of any extra residue, you don't want it. And job done. I've been paving for over 20 years and still when I see a finished job, I get a, hair in the back of my neck standing up thinking what a great little project that was. And I'm sure if you're tackling it for the first time or do something at home, it's an even better sensation.